Welcome to the Body Science Podcast. As always, the information contained in this podcast is for the information purposes only and is not designed to diagnose or be prescriptive to treat, prevent, or manage any injury, disease, or other health-related condition.
Okay, welcome everybody to Body Science Headquarters. This is the world of fit, happy and healthy. And today I can't wait to bring you our latest podcast. I've got on board with me Lachlan Wilmot from Sydney, coming in live. He is, of course, the head of physical performance for the New South Wales Swifts. Lachlan, thank you for being here with us. How are you, sir?
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. It's good to get on. Nice to meet you and have a bit of a chat. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, what a pleasure for us to be able to connect and chat with motivational individuals like yourself. Lachlan, I mean, for those of you that don't know, I mean, we're about to delve into some really exciting high-end elite level performance coaching insights throughout this podcast. Lachlan is currently the head of physical performance for the New South Wales Swifts. Lachlan, over to you. I'd like to know that this is your current role, women's netball. Tell us the grand picture of where you see, starting with the big one straight away, women in sport. Where are we at the moment?
Yeah, it's a big question. Now the first one is a big one, don't you? Yeah, mate, look, I've worked this sort of 20th year as a strength conditioning coach or performance coach, and predominantly I've worked in men's sport across AFL, NRL. That's sort of been my backyard. I run a private facility that does have quite a few female athletes. So before coming onto the Swifts, I'd had a fair experience with a number of female athletes that come from outdoors here, and I've seen for years that the dedication and the drive that the female athletes have in this day and age is phenomenal. Mainly because even the pros, even if you call an A-leaguer a pro, they still only get 6-month contracts. You know, they're AFLW, NRLW. These girls are still only there for 6-7 months, and then they've got to kind of fight for themselves for the other 6 months. So they kind of naturally find a little bit more drive and a little bit more desire to train hard, to find the right things, do the right things, because, you know, in the men's sport, they get, year-long contracts. They're there all year, and they get hounded 24/7 by different staff, different support staff, different coaches. So I think naturally the women's, side of sport has really come about, driven by some really motivated individuals, because they've got to be. Otherwise, they kind of fall by the wayside. And going into netball is no different. Looking at these girls, a lot of them still have to work other jobs. They train, they play hard, and then they've actually got to go and work because the money they make is not enough to necessarily make ends meet in day-to-day life. So I think the motivation and the drive that they have just naturally can exceed some male individuals who potentially get everything sort of given to them. And I think that type of drive is something that has certainly pushed women's sport at the moment. And we can see the World Cup's on, and you look at the attendance that's starting to grow there. It's fantastic. And I think the one thing that women's sport probably lacks at the moment is simply time. Men's sport has had so much time, and women's sport just hasn't. You can say that there's been women's netball obviously for a long time, but you'd hardly say women's sport in general has been at the forefront for a long time. And I think that's the key. We're probably seeing the first generation, and I've got 2 young girls, and we're probably seeing the past couple of years is the first generation of girls that are 5 and 6 years of age that can actually look and see any sport, from rugby league, AFL, soccer, netball, all these sports that girls are thriving in. And they actually have a desire to do it, and they actually maybe do want to go down to the park and have a kick around. Like, I don't think, when I was young, I don't think there was any 5 or 6-year-old girls that had a real desire to go down and kick the AFL ball around the park. And I think that's changing. And when that generation comes through, then you're probably going to see some phenomenal progression.
That's exactly right, Lachlan. It was a question I was going to ask. Like, I was inquisitive myself. Are these women who are elite, the very top of the netball world, are they still having to also work other jobs? And can you break that down for us?
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, this is maybe not the official numbers, but from what I know, I think the rough average netball salaries around that 45,000 a year. You might have a couple of top echelon at about 100,000, but that's it. And no doubt at 100,000, it's certainly enough to live off. But at 45,000 a year, that's tough in Sydney, very tough in Sydney, especially with the changes at the moment and the fact that they dedicate so much of their time to training and being healthy in their bodies and stuff like that. Like, you're a dietitian, you know how expensive it is sometimes to buy things that are of health and how easy it is to just go down the fast food path. But for a lot of netballers, and obviously I'm just averaging out the girls that I work with across the entire league, but a lot of them do have other jobs. Yeah, they need to. They need to do it to keep ends meet. You maybe get one or two in each team that potentially have a Fox Sports deal or another third party deal that can allow them to get a bit more money in. But yeah, they're certainly not getting wealthy off netball. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So this makes their stories sometimes more inspirational and motivational, because people talk about not having the time in the day to, get to gym or to eat healthy or to, all the excuses that we hear. But these are top of the sport, and then still often having to probably do their training in the morning, go and work a job 9 to 5, go back to training in the evening, prepare their meals, find time to, first of all, yes, like you mentioned, as a dietitian, it's about prioritizing the time to do the grocery shop, then the time to actually cook the food, prepare it, and then time to actually eat it accordingly at the right times in the day. And then they're actually performing at highest level, having to have the energy to train, compete, and then like you said, still having to often work a 9 to 5 job as well. So yeah, that must inspire you, and I can imagine that like you kind of feed off each other's energy, right?
Yeah, well, it's the setting itself is, I think, based on that fact, the fact that they've never really been gifted anything, and their strive to make it's always been there. That I think it creates a very robust and very resilient team as a whole. So when something does change, it's not the end of the world. Of working in the AFL, I remember days where the rain probably hasn't been as strong as it has been lately, and the boys would go out and you'd hear complaints about how hard the surface is. And don't get me wrong, yeah, the surface is hard, but sometimes they're the things that get hyper-focused on. Or the ground's not absolutely perfect. Therefore, that's what I'm going to complain about, rather than some of the girls that here we've been kicked off our court and we had to train out of a school. So it's something like, well, it's probably different focus for different people, but yeah, you start to get a few more things put into perspective. I think when it's at that.
That's the word. Hey, it puts things into perspective, and there's no time to sweat the small things or to be so pedantic around the little areas, and they're just looking at the big picture and taking every opportunity that they can, probably not finding any excuses or whinging.
100%.
Obviously 20 plus years in the industry for yourself as a physical performance coach. Would that be right?
Yeah, 20th year this year.
20th year. 20th year. Happy anniversary there. I mean, that's a huge achievement. If I just relate it back to myself quick, studied exercise science, studied psychology, went into Masters of Nutrition, love being a dietitian, realized it's not the first thought that comes to athletes' minds, their nutrition. It's normally the training, and they normally train hard, and sometimes nutrition falls behind. What are your thoughts on that, Lachlan, and what sort of impact do you think, just from yourself personally, that nutrition has in sport right now and going forward?
Yeah, look, I think whether it be strength and conditioning, nutrition, sometimes psychology as well, no one cares more about it than you. Players certainly don't, and don't get me wrong, you're going to come across players that have more of an interest than others. But if you read a great paper that was released on Friday, I can tell you right now that not a single one of your athletes are probably going to care about it. When you get in the bubble, especially S&C coaches, like strength and conditioning coaches, like we'll talk sets and reps all day long and love it, and think other people care just as much as we do. And I think that the really good coaches probably learn early on that their athletes don't care that much about it. And the key is, how do you put it into a frame of reference for them, and how do you make them relate to it? And I think from a dietetic standpoint, that's probably where I think there's sometimes a really big disconnect, because a dietitian may come in and, if they're young and they're keen, they're like, we're counting all the calories, we're balancing this perfectly, we're getting on My Fitness Pal, we're doing this. And they're talking to someone that doesn't have breakfast and has KFC for dinner. Like the jump that you're about to make is huge, So the best dietitians I've worked with are the ones that come in and say, okay, well, let's just meet where you are. So you're currently not having breakfast. I don't care what you have for breakfast. Let's just start having breakfast. If you want to have Pop-Tarts, that's fine. Let's just build a routine. And I think that's probably a good analogy across everything for athletes. When you're dealing with athletes, you got to meet them where they are and understand what the gold standard is maybe not always what the outcome's going to be for that individual. If you can just get them 10, 20% better doing certain things, then that's a big win, because you prefer that than to get annoyed that they're not doing everything perfectly and then ultimately not doing anything at all. So I think that's probably the key for the nutrition side, and it's big.
So true. No, that's so true, Lachlan. I think sometimes dietitians even get a bad name. Like, I fully understand what you just said over there, because it's like there's no point in coming in and trying to be like a food policeman or trying to make them feel intimidated by something and that's just pushing them further away. It needs an individualized approach, meeting each individual athlete where they are. You're right, and just looking for an improvement and making it really realistic, what's actually achievable to them, and read the room, right? So yeah, thank you for what you said. I mean, I think that all our listeners, we can take a lot out of that. It's in any sort of coaching format, you got to look for that individualized approach, to be able to develop the rapport and then to be able to get the results. So it's looking for that extra few percent. That's what it is. They're already elite athletes. They're already performing. What's the potential for some improvement?
100%. And to be honest, it's the same with everyday people. Your general population, people see it on Instagram. They'll see advertisements. They're on TV. And you always see it that they're doing no training and they're not eating well, and then they decide, right, on Monday I'm going to do everything. So they're running every day, they're lifting every other day, they're trying to eat perfectly, and they maintain it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they fall off the perch because they stuff up one day, they go back to the beginning. It's like, well, no, that's a big step. Why don't you just take a small step at a time? Just start training. Even if you don't change what you eat, just start training and then build from there. So I think it's human nature to try and bite off more than we can chew.
Absolutely. So true. That's obviously testament to your success, because you've got experience, and probably wasn't always like that in your first year, but come 20 years, I think you understand the big picture. You understand how to bring out the strength in each individual, and that's what it's about too. So therefore, as a team, they perform at their best. Talk us through on season versus off season, what your strategies would be across the year, because are you in touch with the Swifts throughout the entire year, or is it simply come together few weeks out? Talk us through that periodization.
Well, no, the Swifts, and we talk about women in sport and the female sporting landscape at the moment. The Swifts are a year round. They have annual contracts, multi-year contracts, which is great. In AFLW and stuff like that, they certainly have multi-year contracts, but often the staff that work there don't, as you said, that they're potentially not paid to be approachable all year. So you'll kind of be 6 or 7 months on and then the rest off. But in netball, the staff are for argument's sake, most of them are set on an annual structure. So I'm a part of the Swifts for both the off-season, pre-season, in-season. And it's very much like AFL or NRL when we talk about Australian sport. We'll pick up our pre-season. They're currently in off-season now. We'll pick up our pre-season around October, so probably a little bit earlier than some of the men's sports. But that's mainly because our season finished earlier this year for the World Cup that's currently going on as well. So the Netball World Cup's on at the moment, as well as the Women's Soccer World Cup. So we'll kick off in October, and we'll have what I call like a soft start. We probably won't. Our first pre-season matches will be around March. So you can imagine that's a fairly long pre-season to go from October to March without playing and just listening to my voice telling them to run faster, lift heavier. So we do have a bit of a soft start where they may only come in and we might do weights as a team a couple of times a week, and that just occurs for 3 to 4 weeks. Then within November, we'll go back on court and we'll just do maybe 1 or 2 conditioning sessions for 2 to 3 weeks. Then we'll bring the balls back in and stuff like that. So we have a real graded return. Yeah. Then they'll get a break over Christmas, New Year of about 2 weeks. And then we roll into January where we're far more serious. Coaches are pushing harder from a skill standpoint. Our technical and tactical side is ramped up. And from my standpoint, from a physical performance standpoint, they should be pushing and being pretty good nick by then, because then, as I said, sort of back end of Feb into March is when they'll start to experience some preseason games. And then we'll kick off our season. Now, our season date hasn't been announced for the start date yet, but it'll be sometimes that sort of back end of March. And we'll roll into, they do a 14-game season plus finals. So hopefully, like this year, we'll go all the way to the grand final. And unfortunately, we lost by 1 point in overtime this year. So that still burns pretty deep. So hopefully we can go 1 point better next year, mate, and push all the way through.
1 point loss in overtime in the grand final. I mean, you must still wake up in cold sweats.
Mate, it's a lot of my staff and people I've worked with previously asked me about the netball anxiety. I've seen some amazing. I've been on the sidelines for some amazing AFL and NRL games. That, don't get me wrong, I've had my heart rate go up. But if you've ever gotten into netball, it's ridiculous. It is. From the first minute, it is just back and forth. And I don't know if it's just because you're closer to it, but the anxiety that I experience during a netball game is I've never seen it before. So, the whole season, I don't know how I'm going to do another season, to be honest.
Yeah, they always say it's even harder being on the sideline, isn't it? Like that, and you're obviously so invested. And so what's the morale? And what do you say to them? What are your words after that grand final?
I think you're smart enough to know that you're not really meant to say anything after that. That's a time. It is. It's we all came into the change room and it was very, very quiet. Everyone truly believed that was our time and we should have done it. It's a time for them to sort of be with each other and realistically, there's no words that you can find that are suddenly going to make anything better. They've all just sort of got to feel it. Our coach obviously said a few words around the quality of play and how we played. And obviously the drive that we had, we were down by 9 goals at halftime. So the drive for them to come back is like 9 goals in netball is huge. So for them to actually come back and take it to them and only lose and obviously get it to extra time and then only lose by 1 was a phenomenal effort. But unfortunately, the only things you can say is feel it. Let's reset. We'll come together next week and talk about it because now's not the time. It is. You just got to feel it. And I think to your point, what you say, I think if you go in there thinking you're going to say something that'll suddenly turn it all around, you're kidding yourself. You want your athletes to feel it. I sort of the common adage is you sometimes got to lose one to win one. I think for them to have that feeling and to have it, I suppose, bask in it, so to speak, for a little bit and really know what it feels like to lose something like that. I think it can only create more motivation for when we return in pre-season because that feeling doesn't disappear quickly. It is probably more of a sinking feeling to think that we've got to go through a whole nother pre-season and in-season just to get back to where we are here because it's a long slog.
That's exactly right. That's a long slog. And you always just, whenever you watch a narrow loss like that, you just somehow justify to yourself that they came back from 9 goals. So that at least I think you'd rather be in that position to be the team that came back. And then you go, well, for some reason, it happened for a reason. And now, will that be the returning squad for the new season, or do we lose any players going forward?
It's a great question, mate. If you know the netball landscape at the moment, it's kind of similar to the NRL in the fact that there's actually no CBA that's been agreed upon. So they're actually all in limbo. So in a unique environment, every netballer is actually out of contract. So they lined up all contracts the same. So currently, not a single netballer has a contract for next year.
Wow.
So of our 10, obviously I've got no idea who's going to come and go, so to speak. But as a general feeling, we'll probably have 1 or 2 rotate out, but probably keep a majority, I would have thought. Yeah, but obviously, who knows? I could be wrong.
Wow. Gee, it really is a whole nother world. Yeah, you touched on it would be so wrong of us to not touch on the World Cup over here since we're doing this podcast right now during Netball World Cup. How does our Australian team fare on a world stage?
Yeah, they're amongst the best. Obviously, netball is a Commonwealth-based sport, so the dominant ones that exist in the World Cup are England, Australia, and New Zealand are probably your three big ones, and then you have sort of teams like a Jamaica and stuff that obviously are always a bit of a surprise pocket. But yeah, I would imagine the World Cup will end with Australia versus England, and I'm hoping that Australia get up.
How good is that?
Hi, I'm Tom Green, Olympic champ from Tokyo, and if you want the best tasting protein bars on the market, you should try the new Body Science Mousse range. Greg, you better be testing these.
Mate, they're getting drug tested. Got you covered.
Anyone from the Swifts in there? I mean, any of your players?
Yeah, we've got two of our girls, Paige Hadley and Sarah Clower, in the Diamonds, so Australian representatives.
Thank you for mentioning Paige over there straight away at the top, because obviously Paige is one of our body science athletes, so we're super proud of that.
You picked a good person.
We certainly did, and so we've got go on. So we've got Paige, and who else?
Yeah, we've got Paige and Sarah Clow in the Australian team. We've got Helen Housby, who plays for the Swifts. She's one of our superstars. She's playing for Roses, so for England. And then we've also got Romelda Aiken-George, who was our shooter. She's with Jamaica, so Team Jamaica. And then we've got one of our training partners, Kalia Iongi. She's with Tonga. So
wow.
A couple of representatives there, so it's good.
Lachlan, I'm learning so much. So that's over a handful of your Swifts players playing in the World Cup currently, and mixed across different countries: Australia, England, Jamaica, and Tonga representatives in the New South Wales Swifts. Come on, how good's that?
Yeah.
Deviating a bit to your previous career, if we call it that, let's talk about the Parramatta Eels. I mean, isn't it crazy that we're talking about three different sports here, where you've been in the highest position of performance coaching across netball, league, and AFL, and across two genders here. So let's talk about your experience with Parramatta Eels. Briefly, perhaps, how does that compare with where you're at today in life? Yeah,
look, you could probably put AFL and NRL into the same sort of basket. I think when it comes to the stage of life, like anyone that's in the AFL or in the NRL, and to be honest, I'm sure in a lot of other sports, but I can only speak to them. But it really just encompasses your whole life. It's as I say, it's 9 days a week type work. You know, you're always involved. You're always on call. Whether you're answering to coaches or medical staff or athletes, there's always someone that needs something. And that was at that stage of my life. I wasn't married and I didn't have kids, so it's far easier to do. You can really just delve in. And I find that I've probably, as I've grown through my career, obviously my personal life has also changed. I'm married now. I've got 3 kids. Well, 3 that are under 2.5. So
three under 2.5. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I'm very specific about that. People say 3 under 3, and I make sure I correct them. Like, no, so 6 months make a big difference.
Wow. Wow.
So,
okay.
So my lifestyle is very different externally. And I think I've certainly done really well, and I've been very lucky to be able to adapt my working lifestyle to suit that, because there's plenty of people that do it, and I admire them, but I personally wouldn't want the responsibility of balancing a full-time career within, say, an AFL or NRL environment, whilst still trying to balance 3 kids. And ultimately, it would be my wife that would suffer, because she's the one that would get dumped with them more often than not. And so I think it's just from a family standpoint, it's something that I don't think I could do. So that's where the Swifts are really good, because it is, for me, I'm obviously in the private sector with my facility, which is very flexible for me. But the Swifts are very understanding. I can take my kids in there with me. I've taken my girls in there a few times, and the head coach will change nappies while I'm on the gym floor, and you don't really get that in AFL or NRL. So when you ask, like, what's the difference? What does it look like? I think when you have these full-time sports like NRL and AFL, and you've got, I've got 10 girls on my list versus 35 in NRL, and I was over a 55 in AFL at one stage. it's a lot more work just because of the sheer size of the juggernaut that it is a team, the same as an NFL team with 86 players on it or whatever it is. There's a whole nother juggernaut in itself. So the numbers involved in a team then obviously equal the number of staff, which ultimately decide just how busy you are as a coach.
That's right. So your young ones, boys or girls, where we're at?
Yeah, I got 2 girls and a boy. So
okay.
2.5 girl, a 1.5 girl, and then a 9-week boy.
Oh, okay. All right. So there we go. So we can split it. We've got future netball and future league/AFL right there in your hands. A bit of pressure on them.
we can put the boy into AFL, and we'll put the middle girl can go play NRLW, and then the older girl can play netball.
There we go. There we go. How perfect. They are pretty lucky with the father they've got over there. I mean, they're going to have a bit of pressure to perform, I would say.
Mate, likely story. They probably won't enjoy sport at all, and they'll end up doing something completely different.
That's it. So going into recovery, let's touch on some topical recovery areas, touching on, infrared saunas, cryotherapy, massage guns, and then, of course, more popular normal massage use. And, of course, what we're famous and all about over here in the world of Fit, Happy, Healthy is supplements and supplementation. So you touch on a few of those points for us currently with the Swifts?
It's very simple, and I say this to all my athletes and coaches that ask, because there's a million things out there. First and foremost, sleep well, eat well. You're 90% of the way there. Simple as that. I'm a very big believer that modalities of recovery often are most effective because they give someone a focus point to actually dedicate recovery time. And what I mean by that is, if you love getting a massage, or if you love going for a swim, or if you love an ice bath, you do what you want to do. But the fact that you've consciously dedicated time to look after your body and recover is actually the most powerful part of that, regardless of what you do. If you're sleeping well, and for athletes, most of them will be getting up to 10 hours sleep. That's what we want. And your nutrition is good, meaning you're getting proper amount of calories, high density calories, and you're actually supplementing well with the right supplements. Then everything else is really going to be beneficial based on what you like, because I know plenty of people that hate ice baths but love massage, and vice versa. I love people, spot on. You've got infrared saunas, float tanks, cryotherapy. You got the amount of things that you can use now is phenomenal. And I don't think any one of them is bad or no good. I certainly think the weight of evidence sits in some more than others, i.e. things like ice baths probably got a little bit more weight. Just any type of hydro work, whether that be in the pool or the beach, probably has a higher weight of evidence than a massage gun. But if you love using a massage gun, then that's fine. You can also do that, because you'll probably dedicate 20 minutes, 30 minutes of using a massage gun, probably supplement some stretching and mobility with that. And that's fantastic for recovery. It really is. So the way I work with my athletes is typically off a point system, where I want them to get X amount of points within a certain amount of time. So, for example, after the game finishes, usually we'll have like a 100-point recovery system that you have to get in 24 hours. If you sleep for 10 hours, then that's 40 points straight away. If you have your post-match meal, you have breakfast and you have lunch, then that's another 20 points. And then they've got this window of points where they can play with, where an ice bath might be worth 10, but so is a trip to the beach, and so is a yoga session. So they're all worth 10. So you can choose what you want to do, and you sort of build your own recovery. But the premise is you have a block of time that you focus to recovery. So I know
really like that. If we pause on that, how good is that as a takeaway message? Like the achievement of 100-point process within 24 hours post-game as your recovery. Here you go. This is your weighted scale. This is what you'll get 10 points for sauna. You'll get 10 points for cryo. But the big picture, the big stones in your life, the big blocks, that's get enough sleep. Get your recovery meal in. These are the two main points. And then anything you're doing after that, those are the bonuses. Those are the extras. And then, of course, we'd like to see supplements in there weighted a little bit higher than those other ones, please. And maybe a little bit, maybe just after sleep and food, we'll throw in some protein recovery.
I can be easily bought, mate. I can be easily bought. So I'll see afterwards,
That's a good system. That's an easy takeaway message that people can actually try follow in their own everyday life. I guess big picture again is just acknowledging the importance of recovery.
Well, I think for everyday life, anyone listening that's not an elite athlete, and with all due respect, I don't think the everyday person needs to put so much focus on physical recovery from training, because quite frankly, I don't know how many everyday people train hard enough that means that they really need to dedicate physical recovery. But I am a big believer that type of recovery modalities, whether it be cryotherapy, ice bathing, yoga, these things, it's just good for the mind and soul. I think in this day and age, everyone is always on, and we try and supplement our health by being on again in the gym or running. I think it's good for human nature to be able to find opportunities throughout the week where you can do recovery, but the recovery doesn't necessarily need to be because you physically need it. I think just as a holistic mental approach that having time dedicated to your own recovery is just good to slow things down. Jumping in an ice bath every other day, doing yoga, doing some breath work, all these type of things, I think is very valuable. But at the end of the day, if you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, it doesn't really matter.
No, that's exactly right. And I think you're also touching on the importance of mental health there as well, because that's all part of the balance. And if that means that for them, that's going down to the local cafe and having a coffee with some friends and socializing, or going down to the beach and getting some sun, that's a form of recovery, but also a form of balance and sustainability, right?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, for 10 points on the scale, having brunch with friends is on there. The same as reading a book is on there, because these little things are things that are valuable, and it gets them away. Like a day after the game, with all due respect, the last thing that I think athletes actually need to do is review their game over and over and over the day after. I think you just need to give yourself some distance. You'll get all the reviews you need Monday morning. Trust me, the coaches will make sure you do that. But I think sometimes you just got to distance yourself from the grind of day in, day out game focus.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, isn't that good? As the co-owner of Athletes Authority, talk to us about this venue. When was this founded, and how do you find the time to do this as well, to be a co-owner of a facility for training, and how you're enjoying this part of your life?
Yeah, well, I sort of always knew that I didn't really want to do, I'll put it this way, I didn't want to have pro sport as my sole avenue as I got older and older. I love the idea of a private facility that effectively replicates pro sport for amateurs, and that's what Athletes Authority is. It's a athlete performance facility. We only accept athletes. There's no general members here. There's no one here that's looking to lose 20 kilos and look better naked. It is purely to make sure that they're getting better at their sport or rehabbing for their sport. So we have a huge rehab arm that obviously takes on a hell of a lot of things like ACLs and stuff like that. So making sure that we can recondition athletes' bodies to get back to what they love doing is big as well, because that's another thing that's done quite poorly in the private sector. Everyone can see a physio, but typically that end stage rehab to make sure they're good to go back to their sport is quite poorly done, because it's just not done to a high enough level that we see, say, in the professional level. So we have a facility in Melbourne and a facility in Sydney, and spot on, we specialise in athletes, and that's what we do. And it's certainly a balancing act all the time, but I love it. And that's, to be honest, it's probably more the other way. I think Athletes Authority gives me the time and space to be able to do my work with the Swifts. The Swift girls train out of here quite a bit as well, especially in pre-season, to make sure that they have a bit of a different venue. But we have a huge population of professional female athletes here. We have a lot of A-Leaguers, AFLW and NRLW, mainly because of what I said before, that they have these 6-month contracts where for half the year they've got no one helping them. They're on their own.
Wow.
So they come in, they know what high performance can feel like. And so when they're in their off seasons, they kind of seek it out and they end up here. And yeah, we've probably got enough to field our own A-League team soon enough. And it's been great. And we get these professionals come through that actually are driven and really want to have a crack for sort of a 6-month block before they go back into that environment. But often we see them stay. Obviously, they go back into their pro environment, but they're still popping in here for recovery or to get a training session in to catch up with everyone. So it's a fantastic environment, mate. Really enjoy it.
Oh, cool. Athletes Authority is like a hub for athletes, bringing them together, like-minded individuals, pushing each other through their off-season. And it must be a pretty cool environment for them to come and get together. And this is Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it, the culture. It's and that's realistically why we're actually quite ruthless with who we bring in, because if you do have, for example, one of the girls that just left us this morning, actually, she got a contract over in the UK. She's a young Matilda, and if she's lifting in the gym, she doesn't want someone next to her who has been out on the piss all night and is overweight and just kind of wanting to lose some kilos. She wants someone who's next to her pushing for the next level. That's someone that may be coming up in the A-League, or someone that plays rugby, or someone that's actually motivated with the same goals. And that's what creates that really good culture on the gym floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, good. You must be a pretty proud man with all your achievements, but also knowing that you're doing good. Knowing that you're able to, that you're assisting Australian sport to move forward. And we've got the Australian Netball in the World Cup. And what date can we watch that final?
That's a great question. We've just come out of the rounds now and into the secondary stages. I'm not sure what the actual date of the grand final is, but I reckon it's in about 2 weeks, about 10 days.
Yeah, about 10 days. So we're manifesting that we're in the final for that, and then we'll be pushing into pre-season, and we'll be able to follow the journey of the Swifts going forward into early next year when they begin again, and hopefully get that 1 point better.
Exactly. And hopefully all the body science stuff for Paige will help her through it, mate.
That's right. We're very proud to have Paige, and we're glad that she's out there representing us. And of course, today's segment is brought to you by our new high protein powder, which is available in Coles and Woolworths. 26 grams of protein per serve, 5 digestive enzymes. This is for everyday use. Every individual, from athletes that will be at your athlete's authority, as well as the everyday individual, because we believe that everyone needs to top up their protein intake throughout the day, and this is an easy, tasty, convenient option to help that take place. Of course, first and foremost is food, then training, and then slotting the supplements to make life a bit easier. Lachlan, any closing words from yourself, sir?
No, mate, just appreciate jumping on, and would have been good to do it in person up there, but unfortunately, unless you want to look after my 3 kids, unfortunately, I'm stuck here.
3 kids under 2.5 years of age. And, well, thanks for making this happen, and thanks for your time, and we look forward to following your journey as you go further into this. 20 years in the industry as the physical performance coach. Thanks very much, Lachlan.
Appreciate it, legend. Thank you very much.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.